Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story, a sweeping cyber attack campaign out of China targeting U.S. government and private networks. Reports say even the agency that designs America's nuclear weapons was breached. We have the details. A Chinese-American engineer caught stealing U.S. missile detection tech for China. The California resident was arrested last February and now pleads guilty. Amid rising Washington-Beijing tensions, U.S. giants are retreating from China's AI market. McKinsey and Amazon are among the latest to scale down operations. Is the Chinese Communist Party weaponizing American courts to harm U.S. companies and steal intellectual property? House Judiciary Subcommittee demands answers.
Chinese Communist Party does not directly attack its adversaries' systems. Instead, Beijing seeks to supplant them, subvert them from the inside.
And Google removing nearly 11,000 YouTube channels tied to propaganda from China and others. This move is part of Google's ongoing effort to counter disinformation campaigns. Microsoft is reporting that 3 Chinese hacking groups breached its document sharing platform, SharePoint. 2 of those groups are backed by Beijing. Multiple U.S. government agencies' networks were compromised. Media reports say an office linked to Washington's nuclear arsenal is also among the victims. In a sweeping cyber attack linked to China, cybersecurity research firms say roughly 100 servers worldwide have been affected so far. That includes multiple U.S. federal and state agencies. A person familiar with the matter told Bloomberg that an office overseeing U.S. nuclear arms productions was also targeted by Chinese hackers. But the source says no sensitive or classified information appears to have been leaked. The Energy Department responded this week, saying the hack on its system began last Friday and that the damage is limited. NTD reached out to the U.S. National Nuclear Security Administration for comments but did not hear back before airtime. Microsoft's own report disclosed the bad actors behind the breach. 2 Beijing-backed hacking groups named Linen Typhoon and Violet Typhoon, along with another China-based group, were involved. They targeted users through software exploits on SharePoint. It's a popular platform that allows groups to store and share internal documents. Through those exploits, attackers can remotely plant malware and access stored files and other systems on the same network. Microsoft is now working closely with the Homeland Security Department to help the victims. On Wednesday, a Beijing spokesperson dismissed the allegation, calling it slander. Recently, Microsoft has been in the spotlight over security concerns tied to China. Last Friday, the company announced it will stop using China-based engineers to provide tech support for Pentagon systems. A Chinese American has pleaded guilty to stealing U.S. missile detection technology tied to nuclear missiles for China. California resident Chen Guanggong was arrested in February of last year. Gong admitted to transferring more than 3,600 files from the research and development firm where he worked onto personal storage devices. The theft occurred while Gong was employed at HRL Laboratories. Some of the stolen files included blueprints for advanced infrared systems designed to detect missile launches, including nuclear missiles. Prosecutors say the government and other stakeholders invested tens of millions of dollars each year for over 7 years to develop the technology Gong acquired. He now faces a maximum sentence of 10 years in prison. With tensions rising between the U.S. and China, tech giant Amazon and consulting firm McKinsey are pulling back their AI projects in China. Let's take a closer look.
In a major shift, U.S. consulting giant McKinsey has halted its work on generative AI projects in China, including for multinational clients operating on the mainland. The move comes as the White House tightens export controls on advanced technologies like AI chips. It cited concerns over China's rapid military buildup and intensifying global AI race. McKinsey has faced scrutiny over its ties to Beijing. A page once published on its China website, now deleted, showed about 10% of its Chinese clients were government agencies. At the same time, McKinsey held contracts with the U.S. Department of Defense, raising questions about potential conflicts of interest. According to the Financial Times, McKinsey's AI ban in China currently applies only to firms blacklisted by the U.S. government. This adds to a growing trend of foreign firms pulling back from China. Another example is Amazon. The tech giant is shutting down its AI lab in Shanghai, the company's cloud computing platform. Earlier this year, U.S. tech and consulting giant IBM closed its research centers in China. Microsoft also shuttered its Shanghai AI lab.
We believe that America's destiny is to dominate every industry and be the first in every technology, and that includes being the world's #1 superpower in artificial intelligence, and we are way ahead of China.
On Wednesday, the White House released its new America's AI Action Plan, aimed at securing U.S. dominance in AI moving forward. One key policy calls for delivering American AI products to what the administration calls America's friends and allies around the world.
The Chinese Communist Party is trying to subvert America's legal system to harm Americans. U.S. lawmakers are digging into this threat. Members of a House Judiciary Subcommittee are probing how deep China's abuse of U.S. courts runs. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has the details.
There is nothing wrong with competition. There is a problem with breaking the rules to get ahead, and that is what China has sought to do.
Members of Congress uncovering how the Chinese Communist Party is using the American legal system to shape U.S. laws and harm Americans and American companies.
The fact that it's backed by a powerful country who is using and weaponizing this is particularly disturbing.
We've seen cases affecting our national security, intellectual property, and the safety of Chinese dissidents living here in the United States.
The panel says that the CCP is funding third-party companies with little to no assets, whose only sole purpose is to sue legitimate American companies. These shell companies are supposed to cover the tracks of the CCP, burden legitimate companies with expensive legal defenses, or even steal a company's intellectual property through the evidence exchange process in a legal trial. And American companies that try to fight these in courts are up against the funding of a regime.
The Chinese Communist Party does not directly attack its adversaries' systems. Instead, Beijing seeks to supplant them, subvert them from the inside, such that they advance Beijing's agenda rather than obstructing it.
In many cases, it's difficult to trace the funding directly back to the CCP because the U.S. legal system doesn't require such a disclosure.
We require people to register as foreign agents in other contexts if you're have a blog or something and you're promoting the views of the Chinese Communist Party. But actually, if you're funding a lawsuit, it's not required to be disclosed. It's an odd, strange.
One panelist is a senior VP of a plumbing pipe supply company in North Carolina, and he found that his company has been plagiarized, the logo and the products, in Shanghai. And he's been spending millions of dollars and years fighting this, but to no avail.
There's a building in Shanghai with our logo on the side. And a gentleman was passing out Charlotte Pipe business cards at a trade show in Singapore. That's how we discovered the theft.
The panel called for more transparency in the legal system, while some even called for a complete decoupling of U.S. and China economic ties. Reporting from Capitol Hill, Jack Bradley, NTD News.
Google has removed nearly 11,000 YouTube channels linked to propaganda from China, Russia, and others in the second quarter of this year. The move is part of efforts by Google's threat analysis group to counter disinformation campaigns. Here's more.
In the first quarter of this year, Google removed more than 23,000 YouTube channels and a number of other Google-related assets. A significant portion of the removals were connected to China and Russia. More than 7,700 of the channels and other assets removed in the second quarter were linked to China. The campaign primarily shared content supporting the Chinese Communist Party in Chinese and English. More than 2,000 were linked to Russia or Russian entities and shared content in multiple languages. The channels supported Russia and criticized Ukraine, NATO, and other Western countries.
The Chinese Communist regime's political warfare against Taiwan under the spotlight. On Wednesday, a hearing by the Congressional Executive Commission on China is examining the CCP's strategy. Here are the details.
In addition to growing military threats and economic coercion, the PRC's political warfare against Taiwan has also escalated. Their tactics include manipulation of international laws, United Frontwork activities, espionage, infiltration, and disinformation campaigns. In terms of lawfare, the PRC has twisted the UN Resolution 2758 for political propaganda in the international arena. They not only aim to suppress Taiwan's participation in various international organizations, but also seeks to legitimize the use of force to annex Taiwan.
The aim of CCP political warfare is to isolate Taiwan internationally, weaken domestic support for either de jure or de facto independence, and soften the Taiwanese people's resistance to annexation. Beijing uses all instruments of national power to convince the Taiwan people that unification is inevitable and resistance is futile.
Witnesses testifying at the hearing include a Taiwanese lawmaker and 3 American analysts on China. The hearing addresses 4 dimensions of the CCP strategy: criminalizing advocacy for Taiwanese independence, political and cognitive warfare targeting Taiwan, transnational repression against the Taiwanese diaspora, and global campaign to shape the narrative on Taiwan's status. The Commission says it hopes to explore policy options to counter the CCP's malign activities, reinforce U.S. support for Taiwan's democracy, and advance bills supporting Taiwan.
Vaping rates among U.S. teens have tapered off, but the fight against illegal vapes flooding the market is heating up. Most of these illicit products are coming from China. Let's zoom in.
Federal warehouses are filling up with seized vapes and illegal e-cigarette products. That's because a crackdown is underway on a new generation of illicit vapes flooding the U.S. market, most of which come from China. Many of the products seem designed to attract teens and go unnoticed by parents. The products feature vapes concealed as phone cases, highlighters, or game consoles. In April, attorneys general from more than 24 states called for support from the Trump administration to combat the flood of illegal Chinese products, including e-cigarettes marketed to minors. Data shows the U.S. accounts for nearly 2/3 of Chinese vape exports. FDA Commissioner Marty McCary echoed the warning and said cracking down on illegal e-cigarettes would be a top priority for his agency. In the first half of the year alone, Customs and Border Protection seized over $60 million worth of illegal products. Currently, the FDA has authorized a total of 39 vape products for sale in the U.S.
Coming up, the U.S. has new trade deals with Japan, the Philippines, and Indonesia, marking a major shift in America's global trade strategy that goes beyond economics, countering China's growing influence in Asia.
But I just signed the largest trade deal in history, I think maybe the largest deal in history, with Japan.
Trade deals with the Philippines and Indonesia mean both face a 19% U.S. tariff, while the U.S. pays 0. The deals also include rare earth materials key to high-tech industries.
Strongest, closest, most reliable ally has always been the United States.
And the tariff war between the U.S. and China. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is set to meet his Chinese counterpart next week. What's expected on the agenda? That and more in just a minute here on China in Focus. Welcome back to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. President Trump on Tuesday announced new trade deals with Japan, the Philippines, and Indonesia. It's a major shift in America's global trade strategy. But this wasn't just about economics. The agreements also strengthen U.S. ties with key allies in the effort to counter China's growing influence. We start with Japan, the world's 4th largest economy. President Trump is calling the deal with Tokyo one of the largest trade agreements in history. And beyond trade, Japan remains a key U.S. partner in maintaining stability around Taiwan and deterring a potential Chinese invasion. NTD's Daniel Monahan has the details.
The United States reached a trade deal with Japan on Tuesday.
But I just signed the largest trade deal in history, I think maybe the largest deal in history, with Japan.
As part of the deal, Japan will open to U.S. trade on items like cars and trucks, agricultural products, and more. The East Asian nation will also pay reciprocal tariffs to the United States at a rate of 15%. Trump had threatened an increase to 25% if Japan didn't come to an agreement before the August 1st deadline. Japan will also invest $550 billion in the United States. Trump says the U.S. will receive 90% of the profits from the investments.
In return, Japan will get a 10% lower tariff on Japanese automobiles, cutting the rate from 25% to 15%.
That is the lowest figure to date for a country that has a trade surplus with the United States.
We worked on it long and hard, and it's a great deal for everybody. I always say it has to be great for everybody. It's a great deal.
Japanese cars include some of the most popular manufacturers in the United States, including companies such as Toyota, Honda, and Nissan. And the Asian nation is the fifth largest source of imports into the U.S. Last year, Japan shipped nearly $150 billion worth of goods to the U.S., while the United States exported $80 billion worth to Japan. The president said the trade deal will create hundreds of thousands of jobs.
President Trump on Tuesday announced new trade deals with the Philippines and Indonesia. Both countries will face U.S. tariffs of 19%, while the U.S. won't pay any in return. Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. became the first Southeast Asian leader to meet with Trump in his second term. The Philippines is a critical U.S. ally, especially in the South China Sea, where China has been trying to expand its influence. NTD's Washington correspondent Tamari Otsu has more.
To finishing a trade deal, big trade deal actually.
The White House touting two new trade deals, one with the Philippines and another with Indonesia. Following his meeting with President Marcos of the Philippines, President Trump announced that the Philippines will pay a 19% tariff, while the U.S. will pay 0%. This announcement comes after the two world leaders celebrated their ties in the Oval Office meeting, where President Trump touted his efforts at untilting the Philippines toward China.
Our strongest, closest, most reliable ally has always been the United States.
The country was maybe tilting toward China, but we untilted it very, very quickly. But you know, you had a country that was tilting toward China for a period of time, and I just don't think that would have been good for you.
This meeting comes just a couple weeks after the president sent out a flurry of letters to world leaders threatening new tariff rates if their countries fail to reach a trade deal with the U.S. before August 1st. In this early July letter, the Philippines was expected to face a 20% tariff on any goods it imports to the U.S. when this August deadline arrived, 3% higher than Liberation Day's 17% tariff. The president announced later that Indonesia will also pay a 19% tariff while the U.S. pays 0. Reporting from the White House, Mariotsu, NTD News.
Indonesia will also ease export controls on rare earth minerals to the U.S. The country is currently the world's largest nickel producer. Nickel is a key ingredient used to make lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. Staying with trade, Taiwan is working on a deal of its own. A delegation led by the island's vice premier is in Washington this week for a new round of in-person negotiations with U.S. officials. President Trump has floated tariffs of up to 32% on Taiwanese goods, but no new measures have been announced so far. Taiwan says the talks aim to promote balanced trade and strengthen the economic framework with the U.S. The island has been working to deepen ties with major partners, especially Washington, as it faces growing geopolitical and economic pressure from Beijing. A $500 million boost for Taiwan's self-defense, part of the 2026 Defense Appropriations Act passed by the House last Friday. The funding signals growing U.S. support for the island amid rising tensions in the region.
Last Friday, the U.S. House of Representatives passed the 2026 Defense Appropriations Act, which includes $500 million in military assistance for Taiwan.
China has a recent history of seizing territory. Look at the invasion of Tibet in the 1950s. They've suppressed democracy in Hong Kong. And when the Chinese president speaks of reunification of Taiwan, we should believe that he will attempt it. We cannot allow that to happen. China may not stop with Taiwan. If Taiwan falls, other Pacific Island nations like the Philippines would be threatened.
Ahead of the vote, the Trump administration pushed for an increase in Taiwan aid.
One of the very few areas the administration expressed any slight disagreement with our bill was wanting more money for Taiwan. The administration has proposed including $1 billion, while this bill provides $500 million.
After the House vote, Taiwanese lawmaker Bessent said Taiwan thanks the United States for its support and encouragement, but pointed out that Taiwan's defense is ultimately Taiwan's responsibility. Reporting from Taiwan, Joy Chu, NTD News.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is set to meet with his Chinese counterpart next week in Sweden. The two are expected to discuss a possible extension of the upcoming tariff deadline. Here's what Bessent told Fox Business on Tuesday.
China, that deal expires on August 12th, and I'm going to be in Stockholm on Monday and Tuesday with my Chinese counterparts, and we'll be working out and what is likely an extension then. I think trade's in a very good place with China. We're going to be talking about a lot of the other things that our countries can do together. Hopefully, we can see the Chinese pull back on some of this glut of manufacturing that they're doing and concentrate on building a consumer economy.
The Treasury Secretary says he also wants to warn China about buying sanctioned Russian and Iranian oil and aiding Russia's war against Ukraine. Bessent says he believes U.S. relations with China have moved to a new constructive level. The Treasury Secretary also says he'll be in touch with European counterparts and announce a rash of trade deals with other countries.
That's all for today's China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. If you have any feedback on the show or have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at chinainfocus@ntd.com. We'd love to hear from you. For on-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.